We begin with the latest on what could be the future of travel across the Midwest, the Hyperloop.
No doubt this animation looks pretty cool.
Virgin Hyperloop One just got the green light to build the world's first Hyperloop system in India. Why is this so exciting, and is the potential real?
Well, it is that exciting, and we love the fact that the government's running with this.
Sci-fi stuff, Tiffany. Did you buy your ticket yet?
No, I think I'm going to wait like a few years. Let them get the kinks out.
Well, we'll be shovels in the ground next year, and I think that we can have certification a few years after that. You'll be talking about Hyperloop before the end of the next decade. You'll be riding on Hyperloop before the end of the next decade.
Naturally, with something like this, you wonder how much it's going to cost you, the rider. The specific answer unknown at this point.
After my previous video earlier in 2019 garnering hundreds of thousands of views, one would suspect that the public would begin to ask the hard questions on the project. After all, it wouldn't be the first time the public was promised something new and revolutionary, only to have it not chalk up to what it was hyped up to be. Unfortunately, with something like this, not only have millions of dollars and possibly billions more will be wasted, but lives are also at stake. Best start believing in crazy rides. We're on one. So why is this episode called The Death of the Hyperloop when it's now starting to gain more attention in the political sphere and signing deals? It's not to prognosticate its eventual and damaging downfall with all vaporware, but how this is a dead idea walking, a zombie that is tainting the vastly needed scope of modern transportation infrastructure in the United States. And it will only grow worse and worse until it explodes, taking the industry down with it. You can take that figuratively or literally. We'll also answer the question about what we can do to get the hard questions answered and bring those responsible for our transportation infrastructure, like our elected officials, to bring true solutions into the playing field. In reality, we're the ones truly responsible for what happens, and we have a power more than ever with the internet to share ideas and organize ourselves. Don't forget that. Let's start with the media. I briefly touched upon it in the previous video on how lopsided their coverage is of the Hyperloop and the failure to understand basic science. But hey, journalist majors, for those who want the debt, but not the math classes. There are still some journalists out there that take the time to research and give a voice to all sides. Props to CBS 8 in San Diego for actually doing so when they invited me to opine on their show. And to be fair, skepticism is on the rise in regards to viability. More on that later in this video. Stay tuned. Still, the majority of mainstream media has been the firemen on this hype train, shoveling tons of coal that has kept this hackneyed idea artificially relevant for the better part of the 2010s. Yes folks, it's been that long, with nothing significant to show for this show. The major discrepancy with the media isn't so much their low IQ, but more with their lack of basic research and journalistic ethics. As discussed in the book Trust Me I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday, most of the modern media is pressured to pump out as many crazy, buzzwordy headlines to pull in readers for ad revenue. In our vastly decentralizing world, they're having a big problem with that as it becomes a race to publish the same or slight variation of garbage first, while rushing to churn out the next steaming pile of garbage covered with ads. Oh, how they squirm for pennies when I roll in with uBlock Origin. Much of their info comes from blogs or local newspapers that feed up the monster in this horrible game of telephone and keep their dying networks alive. I say dying because A, most of their average viewer base is either senile or stepping onto the river Styx, or B, the younger generation, regardless of political leanings, is looking to alternative media and independent journalists for news and information. Generally, these are people who are passionate subject experts and aren't beholden to big corporate about what they can and can't say. That being said, platforms like YouTube have been getting more and more picky about what they hard and soft censor to cut whatever little ad revenue these channels get. Their latest reason now is to protect the children.
We're glad to see you, called the children, Believe me, all the George Lucas magic in Hollywood is not going to change the unfortunate genetic configurations on the faces of these children, said Thomas. Do the world a favor, keep these unfortunate youngsters indoors, out of public view.
Which is why some creators have been moving to alternative sites and using Patreon to have fans directly support their channels. ARC is on Patreon, and if you wish to upgrade your ticket to ride, you're more than welcome on board, as more content will be rolling out on Patreon, such as behind the scenes, exclusive gear, and requests for episodes. It's the current year, or the end of the 2010s, and since 2013, every Redditeer dilettante scientist with a NASA graphic tee and poor media intern looking to fill the transportation news story quota for the week have slobbered like Pavlov's dog at the ringing of Elon Musk's Hyperloop. And just like Pavlov's dog, none of them realize that the juicy steak associated with the ringing isn't really there. Elon Musk's involvement with the Hyperloop is slim and fleeting at best. In a conference call in 2013, Elon Musk said this.
I think I kind of shot myself in the foot by mentioning the Hyperloop because I'm too strung out. I mean, I obviously have to focus on core Tesla business and SpaceX. It could just be out there as kind of like a open source design that maybe people can keep improving, and I don't have any plans to execute it because I must remain focused on SpaceX and Tesla.
Since then, him and SpaceX have publicly stated that they are not affiliated with any of the dozen or so Hyperloop companies that have taken his public alpha document and are writing with it. That was the original intention. If you recall from our last video, a certain character by the name of Brogan Bam Brogan reportedly punched the wall when an article mentioned Elon Musk instead of his name as the pioneering visionary involved at the Hyperloop One company. So don't mention it or make this guy mad, please. He's had enough trouble with the walls at his new company Arrivo. Well, former company. Also, his original name was Kevin Brogan. Just found out. No further comment. Back to Elon. His involvement in the Hyperloop has been minimal apart from the competitions until around 2017 when he revealed in a tweet that he received, quote, verbal government approval for the Boring Company to build an underground New York, Philly, Baltimore, DC Hyperloop. New York, DC in 29 minutes. Someone reportedly close to him said his intentions are to build the real thing from start to finish, and they actually trademarked the name Hyperloop and owned the website hyperloop.com. So yes, verbal approval for the Boring Company. And then the White House responded by basically saying,
"No, Elon, it was just talk about your huge plans. I did not give you any approval, unless it's on top of the wall."
Fast forward to today, and the Boring Company is just making dedicated Tesla tubes. They just got approval for a $50 million contract in Las Vegas, after the proposal in Chicago was shot down after red tape and corruption claims. But that's natural for Chicago. Look, if you wanted a super fast airport connector, why settle for a low capacity 125 mile an hour underground car when you can have a 250 mile an hour maglev above ground? But that would make sense. And again, Chicago. Regardless of Musk's level of involvement, some on the internet, especially those lulled by Mr. Musk's cult of personality, believe they have to defend everything for the man, or like everything he does. And granted, I think SpaceX has finally gotten the US ahead in the 21st century space race. Tesla is a great company. I stayed up late to watch the Cybertruck unveiling. I can't stop renting Model 3s on Turo against my girlfriend's will. His cult of personality has forever embedded itself onto Hyperloop, but the guys actually running the show are either P.T. Barnum-esque axe murderers, or as our friend Jeremy Clarkson would put it, have the personality of a wet mop. It certainly hasn't stopped the Hyperloop meme from spreading, from soy-laden redditors to pencil-necked bloggers, and the media who would never come up with anything or lie. The massive attention has progressed to the next worst group of individuals, one that certainly have enough power to enact help or harm on people, and those are the politicians. Recently in Cleveland, Ohio, a public meeting was hosted by the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency and Hyperloop Transportation Technologies to discuss the viability of a Hyperloop route to connect Cleveland to Pittsburgh and Chicago. Representatives from the company HTC, including CEO Dirk Alborn, were in attendance to a public meeting along with NOACA's head, Grace Gallucci. What was presented? Only the results of a $1.3 million study on the benefits of the Hyperloop to the region, paid for by HTT and NOACA. Now, we haven't found the exact amount that HTT paid, but NOACA, which did pay for it, is a metropolitan planning agency that gets money from, you guessed it, you, the taxpayer. But hey, already off to a great start with 0 subsidies, right? For the record, Brightline paid for all its FEIS studies in full. According to the recent Hyperloop study, it claims to connect Cleveland to Chicago in 47 minutes via toll road right-of-ways, or 31 minutes if they go under Lake Erie and Lake Michigan, trying as hard as possible to avoid Indiana for some reason. Sorry, fellow Hoosiers. But maybe take that as a blessing, since that means less Ohio drivers on the road overall in Indiana, finally freeing the left lanes for passing. PSA, this is a turn signal, not a Christmas tree light, Ohio. In all seriousness, this is a region that can be easily served with high-speed rail, which has proven higher passenger density, safety record, speed, and is in the state of existence, not computer graphics. I live in the Midwest, and it's a quickly resurging and growing region as of late, with more available higher-paying jobs and lower cost of living compared to the coastal cities. A reason why millennials are moving over here in droves over other regions, according to LendingTree, Forbes, Ellie Mae, and others. Given the Midwest has a tremendous opportunity with so many of these cities in prime range for high-speed passenger rail connections, much like Japan, Europe, China, or even our own Northeast Corridor, why so much effort is being drawn on a technology that is unproven and doesn't exist, let alone will be inferior to even conventional high-speed rail in all aspects, is beyond any rational person. But sometimes, unshakable trust in the unknown and unproven is all you need. Quote, clearly the project shows a very good merit and is in fact the first intercity passenger ground transportation system to show a positive rate of return that Thames has assessed in the last 30 years, said Alexander Metcalf, president of the Transportation Economics and Management Systems. Speaking of things from the last 30 years, that website. Enter here. The U.S. House of Representatives has put a lot of trust in similar statements made by the various Hyperloop companies, so much that it has approved $5 million to create the Non-Traditional and Emerging Transportation Technology Council, or NEAT? NET? Oh, and already look, NOACA has stated that the quote, Hyperloop being explored between Chicago and Cleveland could get federal funding through the bill. Dare I say, courtesy of you, the free money machines.
Taxation is theft.
Since Virgin Hyperloop 1 showed off the current progress up at the swamp between Virginia and Maryland, Democrat Senator of West Virginia, Joe Manchin, has been very interested in the potential of a Hyperloop certification and testing center in his state. Courtesy of you, the taxpayer. To add to that, the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission and PennDOT also backed a 4-year, $2 million study for a Pittsburgh to Philly Hyperloop route, courtesy of none else, you, the Fortunately, the US isn't the only country where its politicians are revving up to put hand over fist for the Hyperloop. I'm sure you've heard of India, a beautiful country in South Asia, with funky music, and a population of over 1 billion people. It's also well known throughout the internet that India has a dream, to be a superpower by 2020. At the time of this upload, it's a little less than a month to go, so if you're watching this in 2020, let me know if India has indeed achieved superpower. It does, however, have some serious problems before getting there. It may have finally defeated the plague of toilet witches, preventing the country from using the loo. It still has the worst air pollution in the world, with 7 out of the 10 most polluted cities being in India. The Ganges is still filled to the brim with pollution, and well, it's inadvisable to even let your dog take a drink from the ocean. To be fair, it has at least caught up to San Francisco. India also has the 4th largest railway network in the world, one that has been plagued with terrible safety problems.
We expect to receive the full safety certification from the government to be able to move forward with the rest of the route.
As I stated in the previous video, India has already moved forward as Prime Ministers Narendra Modi of India and Shinzo Abe of Japan signed a deal on bringing a Shinkansen system to connect Mumbai to Ahmedabad, certainly a system that could quickly accommodate the massive density of travel between these two megacities. The state of Maharashtra in India has gone ahead and approved a Hyperloop route between Mumbai and Pune for Virgin Hyperloop 1, deemed the first in the world. Granted, this time they say none of India's taxpayers will pay for the project. For now. DP World, a massive port operating company based in Dubai in India, will be ponying up to $500 million to start the project. Hyperloop 1 at least has some sort of test track, albeit it's only the 500-meter track in Nevada, and it's just straight. Hasn't made any turns, nor transported even a mouse. So with little seating capacity as they've shown, how many can the Hyperloop house? In all seriousness, Hyperloop 1 and all involved have taken victory laps on the news, but what about those involved? Just like here in the US, the people of India are about to get taken on a wild ride, one that hasn't even reached its final form. See, the idea has morphed into so many different variants and companies that it's become a parody of itself. So we have Virgin Hyperloop, bought by the same Richard Branson, who is also the de facto figurehead behind Virgin Brightline. So which is it, Sir Richard? Will it be high-speed rail or Hyperloop?
Yes.
There was actually a Hyper Not In Tube pod, Arrival, by our buddy Bam Buddy. Now it's intellectual property being reanimated from probably the last place you'd expect to find actual intellectuals. Reddit. Oh god, this is not going to end well, is it? There's one that carried over the front-facing suction fan from the original Hyperloop Alpha document called Transpod. At least they're honest about their partners. There's plenty that seems to have a lot with Autodesk. Lots of Autodesk AutoCAD. And then there's my personal favorite, one that will turn all the other ideas on their head. Just take the Hyperloop and turn it upside down. Heart Hyperloop. Of course, Musk himself has changed the Hyperloop idea quite drastically, from the magnetically powered air ski levitating version to a low-density underground bus and Tesla mover. Why? Because public transportation, according to Musk, is full of, quote, random strangers, one of who might be a serial killer. Yes, Elon, I get California public transportation might be a bit sketchy, but I don't suspect the salaryman and Obasans playing Pokemon on their Switch to randomly shank me for my Snake Eater Pachinko winnings. All of these companies and ideas have festered into this hydra of incoherence and very technology hungering for public subsidies and angel investors. Certainly, one must prevail and slay the beast, and by golly could it be a brave young woman that has humiliated Elon Musk and has come up with the Hyperloop idea to end all Hyperloop ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, the atmospheric railway. An idea already in existence for close to 200 years that the media interns at CNN and the like have never heard of. So they published slight variations of the same headline dozens of times. Earlier I said the skepticism to the Hyperloop project has been rising to some in the media. These challenges are ultimately a good thing. Geoff Manu states in his article Hypnotized by Elon Musk's Hyperloop in the New Yorker, quote, "The trouble with the Hyperloop is not its breathless gee-whizzery, it's the fact that it mistakes a charismatic mega-project for a viable solution to current problems. If the Hyperloop's purpose is to address large-scale urban mobility, then there are many other options already deserving of public funding and attention, ones that do not require a hard rebooting of the entire urban world to be realized. We could increase funding for Amtrak, we could make our existing subways run on time, safely, we could fix our bridges. The Hyperloop is by no means the solution that most people have been waiting for, other than the journalists wondering what story they might cover next. Kelly Wheel of the Daily Beast earlier in 2019 drilled down how many plans were failing, apart from the Colorado with Arrivo, after of course getting incentives to fund a study, courtesy of you, a taxpayer. To the plant in Virginia after public officials took quite a bumpy test ride in the Boring Company's not-so-hyper tunnel, and of course, in Chicago, after Musk himself donated $55,000 to Chicago mayor and Hyperloop proponent Rahm Emanuel. Aaron Godin of Jalopnik, like many, was not pleased on the Boring Company's tunnel. The title and category says it all. Apart from the sketchy sketches, the prospect of tunneling that could harm the Vegas monorail's columns and force a, quote, shutdown for costly repairs, one comment stood out. One word, in fact. A user by the name of Infinity Arrow wrote, "Boring Company looks like a quick cash grab at this point. Complete vaporware." Vaporware, according to Wikipedia, is a product, typically computer hardware or software that is announced to the public, but is never actually manufactured nor officially counseled. This has been a tech industry term that has branched out recently for automobiles and transportation, and it's fair to say that Hyperloop very well fits this term, as damning as it may seem. Often, vaporware is, quote, announced years before its purported release, with few details about its development being released. This is all valid criticism, and some are completely blind to the fact or prospect that any ingenious idea by Musk or anyone would never fail, and any wrong think is coming from people who are stuck in the past and will be eventually proven wrong. This is usually followed by angry varieties of the Mahatma Gandhi quote all over the YouTube channel. But facts in history are just that, facts in history. People like myself, Thunderfoot, and EVblog have put out videos drilling down the important bits and asking the tough questions on what this Hyperloop project really is, and I have to thank them both for speaking out on this and sharing their views on YouTube. Granted, those two have far more experience in the field of science and physics than the slacker who switched from mechanical engineering to international business. Yours truly. But I do know business, or at least I like to think so. Enough to know about a recent and similar story to the Hyperloop, and that is of Theranos. To summarize, Theranos was a company started by a woman named Elizabeth Holmes that had a vision to change the world of healthcare forever. Despite dropping out from Stanford, Lizzie had it all: influential connections and a vision. What if we could make a machine that could analyze just a drop of blood to instantly calculate hundreds of different blood tests over an internet connection? It would be like grandma's blood sugar monitor, only beefier and not used right after the dessert section at Hometown Buffet. Starting in the mid-2000s, Elizabeth was able to amass millions of dollars from investors, promising a product that those in the medical and engineering fields knew would be an improbable mess. Still, the dilettantes in the media and seed investors kept shoveling cash. It got to the point where she was associated with companies such as Pfizer, Walgreens, Safeway, funding from the Partner Fund, Rupert Murdoch, the Walmart brothers, the DeVos family, a board with people including Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, and General Mattis. She even held a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton, was made an entrepreneurial ambassador by Obama, praised by Biden on how futuristic their office was, and was associated with the Clinton Foundation and Old Bill himself. For the record, I'd like to state that a certain someone did not do a certain something to themselves. Don't ban me, YouTube. Lizzie would sometimes get into a tizzy, and Theranos was filled with more wacky drama than telenovelas on Univision. For example, when her CFO mentioned that, I don't think this product is ever gonna work, she fired him and never had the position filled again for 10 years. When things in the company were falling apart later on, a close employee to Holmes committed suicide, and she barely eulogized the man, knowing he'd take the company's darker secrets to the grave. Lizzie had an axe to grind with many people. Not Bam Brogan's axe, thank God, but she certainly went out of her way to hire people from places like Apple, whom she later fired if they didn't agree with her. Elizabeth Holmes knew very well that her product wasn't going to work, but it didn't stop her and the company from falsifying tests and running them on multiple third-party machines and claiming the results came from their one own machine. By the mid-2010s, Elizabeth was worth close to $5 billion and was the media darling everywhere she went, appearing on magazines, cable news, trade shows, and TED Talks. Sound familiar? And few of the intrepid media, savvy investors, and virtuous politicians knew the complete disaster happening behind the castle walls. The Wall Street Journal, of all places, actually did an undercover investigation exposing the deceit in Theranos, and it was only then after years and billions of dollars did people begin to finally question.
This is what happens when you work to change things, and first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
Why does everyone use this cliche quote with just a bit of salt? Holy crap. In the end, Holmes and others of the company are now being indicted on criminal charges. Many companies and influencers follow this path, and there are plenty of Enrons, WeWorks, Bernie Madoffs, Callaways, Delveys. They all have something in common: cults of personalities, extraordinary visions, an unquestioning audience, and little or nothing to show. The Hyperloop is following the same pattern. What's worse about all of this is it's a matter of time for when the Hyperloop will implode. And when it does, it will also hurt the reputation and funding avenues for proven methods of rapid transportation. Because as also stated on the Wikipedia page, developers have been accused of intentionally promoting Vaporware to keep customers from switching to competing products that offer more features. So many advanced methods of rail transportation already exist, like high-speed rail and maglev, all capable of hitting speeds approaching 400 miles per hour and probably beyond in some cases, while already having the ability to carry thousands of passengers in one go with a proven safety record. America is at the verge of finally fixing its transportation woes, but what would happen to regions like the Midwest if state and local governments pushed and funded an idea that is impractical and not even proven capable of living up to the hype? Would the public be willing to support yet another transportation project after the failure? And what of the millions of younger people moving in and their needs for better transportation, again failed by the current generation of politicians? We have a chance to question a monstrosity before it's too late. Now that you've watched this video, how much of a threat do you think is the Hyperloop to American infrastructure, and other countries also? Are the sycophants protecting anything connected to Elon Musk right in any regard? And what can be done to push true solutions in your neck of the woods? I've mentioned in my previous video on how to get involved more politically in detail. The upcoming public Hyperloop forums are the perfect place for us as young people to start getting involved. We'll be posting the dates as they come up across the US, and we'll be attending ones close by. Write to your politicians, to NOACA, why they're pushing something unproven when they have ignored real solutions. For now, I will be following this closely and reporting on real solutions to make America's railroads great again. This concludes our ride for today. Let your conductor and fellow passengers know what you think about the hype of Hyperloop in the comments below and its eventual death. And be sure to subscribe to the American Rail Club and click that bell so you don't miss the next train when it leaves the station. Upgrade your seat when you join us on Patreon, where I'll post behind the scenes videos and exclusive chats. You can also be able to claim some nice apparel. Also join us on Discord on Transport Central. Thank you for riding. We'll see you on board next time.